It's showtime! Welcome everyone to another horror-filled episode of Starmen Sinister Spook Fest. With me is Cody and David at the moment.
Hello, ghouls and goblins.
Hell to everyone.
And guys, this is going to be a compilation of creepy ghost stories, or just ghost stories we like, that we found. And, yeah, it's just going to be us reading stories to you.
Enjoy the nightmares.
Jeez, you're just channeling the count tonight, aren't you?
Yep.
But, as Cody said, please enjoy. Hello everyone, and this is my first story of this series of compilations. It's called A Note from a Serial Killer. Please, do not try to run. No one has been able to evade me yet. I will remain the last of your fears, unable to be conquered. I will blind you, weaken your spirit, break your bones, and tear you apart. I'll be sure to erase every memory you ever cherished. You will forget everyone you know and everyone you love. But don't worry. I'm sure they'll forget about you too. You're nothing to me. Do you not understand? I wish I could say I enjoyed having you around. Your old friend, Time. Thank you.
Hello, this is Curtis. The following is one of many stories from an anonymous search and rescue officer who has chronicled his experiences with unexplained wilderness phenomena. His story begins. As someone who spends literally all of their time in the woods, you don't ever want to let yourself become scared of being alone or scared of being out in the middle of nowhere. That's why, when you have experiences like this, you tend to just forget about them and move on. This is, to date, the only thing that's ever really made me seriously consider if this job is the right one for me. I don't really like talking about it much, but I'll do the best I can to remember it. As I recall, this took place right at the end of spring. It was a typical lost child call. A 4-year-old girl had wandered away from her family's campsite and had been missing for about 2 hours. Her parents were completely despondent and told us what most parents do. My kid would never wander away. She's so good about staying close. She's never done anything like this before. We assure the parents that we'll do everything we can to find her, and we spread out in a standard search formation. I was partnered with one of my good buddies, and we were sort of casually holding conversation while we hiked. I know it sounds callous, but you do sort of become desensitized when you've done this long enough. It becomes the norm, and I think that to a certain extent, you have to learn to desensitize yourself in order to work this job. We search for a good 2 hours, going well beyond where we think she'd be, and we come out of a small valley when something makes us both stop in unison. We freeze and look at each other, and there's almost a sensation like a plane depressurizing. My ears pop, and I had this odd sensation of having dropped about 10 feet. I start to ask my buddy if he felt that, but before I can, we hear the loudest sound I've ever heard in my life. It's almost like a freight train passing directly by us, but it's coming from every direction at once, including above and below us. He screams something to me, but I can't hear him over this deafening roar. Understandably freaked out, we look all around us, trying to find the source of the sound, but neither of us sees anything. Of course, my first thought is a landslide, but we're not near any cliffs, and even if we were, it would have hit us by now. The sound goes on, and as we're trying to yell over each other, but even standing close together, we can't hear anything but this sound. Then, as suddenly as it starts, it stops, like someone threw a switch and cut it off. We stand there for a second, perfectly still, and slowly the normal sounds of the woods come back. He asks me what the fuck just happened, but I just kind of shrug, and we stand there looking at each other for a minute. I get on the radio and ask if anyone else just heard the end of the fucking world, but no one else hears it, even though we're all within shouting distance of each other. My buddy and I just sort of shrug off and keep going. After about an hour later, We all check up on the radios, and no one else has found the little girl. Most of the time, we won't search when it gets dark, but because we don't have any kind of lead on her, a few of us decide to keep going, including me and my buddy. We keep close together, and we're calling out for every couple of minutes. At this point, I'm hoping beyond hope that we find her, because while I may not like kids, the idea of them being all alone in the dark is awful. The woods can be intimidating to kids in the daylight. At night, well, it's a whole different beast. But we're not seeing any signs of her or getting any responses, and around midnight, we decide to turn around and head back to the rendezvous point. We're about halfway back when my buddy stops and shines his light to the right of us into a really thick deadfall, or a group of dead trees. I ask him if he's heard a response, but he just tells me to be quiet a second and listen. I do, and in the distance I can hear what sounds like a kid crying. We both call the girl's name and listen for any kind of response, but it's just this really faint crying. We head in the direction of this deadfall and go around it, calling her name over and over. As we get closer to the crying, I start getting this weird feeling in my gut, and I tell my buddy that something isn't right. He tells me he feels the same way, but we can't figure out what it is. We stop where we are and call the girl's name again, and at the same time we both figure it out. The crying is on a loop. It's the same little hitching sob, then wail, then quiet hiccup, repeated over and over. It's exactly the same every time, and without saying another word, we both take off running. It's the only time I've ever lost my composure like that, but something about it was so incredibly wrong, and neither of us wanted to stay out there anymore. When we got back to the rendezvous, we asked if anyone else had heard anything strange, but no one else knew what we were talking about. I know it sounds sort of anticlimactic, but that call fucked me up for a long time. As for the little girl, we never found a trace of her. We keep an eye out for her and all the other people who we've never found, but frankly, I doubt we'll ever find anything. Hello, this is Curtis again. In response to the previous story, one veteran of the wilderness shared the following warning. I'm a trail guide and a backpacker. Years and miles. Seen lots of shit. I can't explain everything I've seen in the wild, but I can tell you this. You will see things out there that defy explanation, and you'll spend the rest of your life wondering about them. If you ever take a word of caution, take this like your life depends on it. Don't go into the wild alone. Don't stray from your camp at night. Don't answer or seek out anything that calls you mysteriously in the night. Do not believe everything that you see with your own eyes. I need to repeat that, like your life depends on it. Do not believe things, especially out-of-place people, voices, or suspicious things that you see, even with your own eyes, especially when your gut and instincts are warning you. There's something out there, something that scares grown men even like me, something we won't talk about, but it's real, has no consistent form, and it lures you. If you are a wild thing and a hunter of human beings, there's no better hunting ground than our busiest national and state parks. Note I said busiest. If you are a hunter of opportunity, then there's no better prey than the young, the weak, the old, the alone. There's something out there, so old, so skilled, so clever and cunning, not just a being, but a species that has developed a specialized survival skill, luring and preying on lost or solitary humans. Can a predator in the natural world lure, trap, summon, or even hypnotize their prey? A quick Google search should yield you hundreds of examples of such species in the animal, fish, bird, and insect kingdoms. What I submit, if there does exist such a species, as old as humanity itself, whose success depends on the successful hunting of humans, not only would it be very clever and very good at it by now, but we'd have no record or memory of it in our history, just as no insect has probably ever survived an encounter with a trapdoor spider. I submit their hunting approach is case by case. The lure they use is different depending on their human prey's age, strength, and size, but what I submit is that our oldest natural predator, an undiscovered predator, is still operating due to its skill of being able to read us like a book, to ensnare us with a lure I've distinctly recognized several times, particularly at night, just beyond the glow of the campfire. They know how to lead us into a trap, to never be heard or seen again. I've felt the lure, tasted it, smelled it. It's the smell of food when you're hungry, company when you're lonely, music where there should be none, beauty where there's danger. Nothing can explain the sensations, but deep down you'll feel it, in your gut. Something's not right. Something's waiting. Something's watching. Ask any man who survived long enough alone in the wild. There's a hunter out there. It'll have you dead to rights if you don't listen to your gut.
Gather around, everyone. It's story time from your old pal David. This story is called The Keyhole. A man went to a hotel and walked up to the front desk to check in. The woman at the desk gave him his key and told him that on the way to his room, there was a door with no number that was locked and no one was allowed in there. Especially, no one should look inside the room under any circumstances. So he followed the instructions of the woman at the front desk, going straight to his room and going to bed. The next night, his curiosity would not leave him alone about the room with no number on the door. He walked down the hall to the door and tried the handle. Sure enough, it was locked. He bent down and looked through the wide keyhole. Cold air passed through it, chilling his eye. What he saw was a hotel bedroom like his, and in the corner was a woman whose skin was completely white. She was leaning her head against the wall, facing away from the door. He stared in confusion for a while. He almost knocked on the door out of curiosity, but decided not to. He crept away from the door and walked back to his room. The next day, he returned to the door and looked at the keyhole. This time, all he saw was red. He couldn't make anything out besides the distinct red color. Perhaps the inhabitants of the room knew he was spying the night before and blocked the keyhole with something red. At this point, he decided to consult the woman at the front desk for more information. He sighed and said, Did you look through the keyhole?" The man told her that he had, and she said, "Well, I might as well tell you the story. A long time ago, a man murdered his wife in that room, and her ghost still haunts it. But these people were not ordinary. They were white all over, except for their eyes, which were red." And that, my friends, was the story. Have a pleasant night.
Hello, again it's me, Devin, and I'll be offering up another horror story. This one is called Party Crashing by Teddy, found on the Creepypasta website. Halloween is by far my favorite time of year. The one wonderful day where walking around with a mask is socially acceptable. Masks hold quite a unique place in society. A mask can transform anyone into something else, turn an actor into a character, hide the secret identity of a superhero, or even allow monsters to walk among men. You never know what's behind a mask until it's taken off. But that's the best part of Halloween. No one's going to take off anyone's mask. There's no gang of teenagers with their talking dog there to strip away my disguise and reveal the truth underneath. No, this is reality. And on Halloween, I'm perfectly able to hide in plain sight. Of course, wearing a mask has its own special meaning for me. I'm not an actor, not a superhero, or even a monster. Not in a fictional term, at least. No, I simply use the mask as a means of entry. Any mask works, really, as long as it covers my face. I manage to use a different one each year. All I need to do is walk the streets of my suburban neighborhood, weave my way through various decorations and dodge packs of trick-or-treaters, until I hear the familiar blaring of loud music. Like a sailor to a siren at sea, I'm drawn to the music, to the party that emanates from. Yes, this is why Halloween is wonderful. No one seems to ever ask questions at the door of a Halloween party. All I really need to do is knock, wave when the door is open. The mask makes people just assume I'm here for the party. Hell, sometimes people just leave their front doors wide open, allowing even easier access into their home. On Halloween, no one gives a second glance towards a masked man making his way through their midst. which is what makes my hobby oh so fun. They are completely oblivious as I approach their food. They continue to chatter and gossip as I add my own special ingredients to the bowl of punch. They continue to dance and play as I stab small sharp needles into their chocolates and sweets. It's not long until their first friend drops to the floor, either choking on my poison or coughing up bloody needles. That people start to panic. It's the same every year. As soon as I leave the party and hear the chaos rising behind me, an unstoppable grimace forms under my mask. Screams of terror, such pleasant noise on such a pleasant holiday. Thank you.
I'm Curtis, and I'd like to tell you a little tale about the Gumdrop Village. Across the meadow and straight ahead is a Gumdrop Village where laughter is spread. The teddy bear boys and ragdoll girls play games and run and dance and twirl. They drink mugs of hot cocoa and eat gingerbread pie, and giggle with glee as the fairies fly by. And as the bubblegum day turns to bubblegum night, they all skip to bed and snuggle in tight. But this night is different and equally strange, for this is the night when the moon starts to change. The milky white surface grows purple and brown, and spreads forth its tendrils and sends them straight down, to lurk through the forest and the meadow and the streets, seeking the sweetest of after-dark treats. The moon's writhing tendrils burst into houses, dragging away froggies and dollies and mouses, coiling around ponies and velveteen bears. They lift them up screaming to the moon in the air. The villagers are tossed to the moon's purple ground, as the roiling feelers thrash all around. Teddies and fairies can scarce run away, for the ghouls and the goblins come out to play. Corralling the darlings with pitchforks and claws, they shove them all wailing down the moon's gaping maws. Their shrieks and their screams soon die in the night, and the ghouls run and hide while the moon turns to white. And the lemon-drop sun brings the safety of day, and those who survived run outside to play. They don't cry or whimper or mourn all their dead, but decide to play tag and eat cookies instead. One night of horror for a year filled with play. It's a simple price that they're willing to pay.
Hey everybody, this is my ghost story. It's called Ghost Bro. I found it on Reddit. It was submitted to a subreddit by Corty Sunny. So, my house was built in 1904. It is a single family home, wood frame setting on a concrete block foundation. I've been living here for about 12 years. Of all the weird things that my siblings and me have seen or heard in this house, this one event is my favorite. This happened to my brother. About 10 years ago, my brother and his best friends had started a garage band playing mostly Spanish rock, alternative music, but in Spanish. His friends could only get together on Sunday afternoons. They would practice into the early evening, and they would usually call it quits by 8 p.m. This was the time I usually showed up and went to bed, because I worked the graveyard shift. This happened in late fall, so the days were getting shorter. They had just finished a long session when the decision to head out to someone else's house came about. My brother handed his car keys to his buddy so they could load up the equipment. Everyone had filed out of the basement, but the tricky part was that they needed to walk all the way to the back of the basement, up the back stairs, through the kitchen doorway, down the hall into the living room, and out into the front porch. Everyone was outside sitting in my brother's truck waiting for him. My brother was walking up the back stairs when he remembered that he had left his pancakes in a to-go container sitting on a speaker in the basement. He made the decision to go back. Now, the basement is not clean. With full sight lines, there had been partitions made, and the boiler and main heating unit are right smack in the middle. So after my brother walks back, he is about to retrieve his food container. When out of the corner of his eye, he sees it. It is a shadowy figure right at his peripheral vision. This feeling of dread and uneasiness washed over my brother. We had been taught that if you are in the presence of a spirit or a ghost and you felt a bad vibe, to say a quick prayer or to cuss at it. My brother chose the latter. He basically just told it, "Hey, screw you, I don't have time for this crap." My brother started to walk to the back of the basement and briskly up the stairs, closing doors and turning off lights as he was walking out. The last light switch is on the opposite side of the front door. Luckily, the door was open and the light from the street lamp was flooding the living room with its amber light. My brother said he felt something at his back, but at no point did he turn around. As he flicked the last switch in the living room, and it went dark, as did the rest of the house. As he stepped out, he pulled on the door, closing it behind him. Still holding his food container in one hand, he jogged down the few porch steps. He walked towards the front gate. Our house resides far from the main street, essentially having a large front yard but no rear garage. As he closed the gap between himself and his friend-laden truck, he kind of smiled and thought things over in his head, mad at himself for spooking out when there was no reason. He climbed into the driver's side of the truck, putting on his seatbelt and getting ready to pull out of the parking spot directly in front of the house when one of his friends asked, "Hey, wait, what about your brother? Isn't he coming with us?" My brother answered, "What do you mean? He went to work early tonight. He's already gone. Do you see his car anywhere?" The next question they asked, "So then who was that walking behind you when you were leaving the house?" And that's basically the story. Hope you all enjoyed it.
And that's all for our creepy ghost stories. Thank you all for listening. Again, this has been another episode for our spooktacular Sinister Spook Fest. Until then, I'm your host, Devin.
I'm Cody, and remember, it's always better to be dead.
And I'm David. Tick, tock, tick, tock.
Sleep well, everyone.